Hi, I'm Tony Mulholland, Chief Engineer for R&W Rack Network. What we have here is a device that we call an e-Plaque. An e-Plaque is a means of communicating with the warehouse staff what the capacity of the rack is, and it's easily updatable. It also provides evidence of compliance with regulations and laws, and is something that the Ministry of Labor, in all likelihood, be very happy about the fact that you have one of these. Main screen has the layout of the warehouse, and if we pinch and expand, we can see details of what the configurations are. For example, this is configuration 1. This one over here is configuration A. Every rack in the warehouse is identified, and we go over to another screen called configurations, and each one of those elevations is clearly identified here. And as you can see, the capacity of the rack is also identified here as 2,500 pounds per pallet, leaving no doubt for the operator in terms of what his load restrictions are for the particular configurations throughout the warehouse. Another aspect of this here e-Plaque is that it has 2 languages for those facilities that require English and French. The button here will provide a configuration that is in French, and of course we can go back to the English as we were a minute ago. So we've seen the layout button, we've seen the configurations button, so let me talk about the button that's called cautions. On this screen here, it provides a number of notes in terms of the use of rack and typical cautions such as do not climb the rack, or do not adjust without approval. These are often symbols and cautions that are put on hard plaques that might be in a warehouse. And we find that they're somewhat overwhelming and not necessarily useful for the operators. But all of the cautions and all of the various notes are here for anyone to walk up to the screen and review it. I mentioned that the Ministry of Labor would be interested in seeing your plaque, because on this here page called compliance, what we can see is a certificate that says that the racks have been inspected by a professional engineer. Finally, there's a screen called contacts. It is on this screen persons that work in the warehouse can go to and find out what phone numbers they need to call for support or any sort of technical information that they need. I should mention too that on some of these buttons, for example configurations, you can see that there's a side scroll, so we can put multiple pages of configurations on any given tab. And finally, there is a table under a tab called load limits, which summarizes all the various configurations that are in the facility. In fact, in Canada we quite often are familiar with a term called pre-start health and safety review, and this table is in essence comes from the pre-start health and safety review. We have the configurations, we have all the locations for the beams, we have which frames are allowed, which beams are allowed, and of course the all-important how much load per pallet or how much load per level is allowed to be on the rack. One of the very interesting things about this plaque is that it's very updatable. And so if we find out that there are new configurations, or if the customer decides that he needs some additional configurations, we simply make the changes, load it on a USB, and then the person going to site takes and plugs this USB into the computer, and the computer will automatically start to download the information on the USB. At some point this screen comes up and says you take the USB out and tap the screen to complete the update. Key is removed, we tap the screen, and within a few seconds the new configuration and all the new data all comes up on the screen. This allows you to keep your facility current without having to tear down the various plaques that you may have had put up on the ends of rows. For larger facilities, this is a very unique tool, and our customers like it. These plaques, for example, are used at all the Kia stores. They're used at all the Ford warehouses, they're what they call their parts distribution centers. Overall, the cost of this is less than posting plaques. Because it's so easily maintainable, it will ultimately save you money. But also, this is an excellent device for training your staff. You can gather your workers or your lift truck operators. You can discuss the layout. You can discuss the load limits. It's very available to them at any point in time. If they want to know a load limit, they simply have to note the configuration, and then they go to this chart, come across, and they'll know exactly what the limit is for loading that particular bay or that particular row. This screen provides you everything you need to be in compliance with CSA A344 latest edition.